Good everyone, Organized Video, and today we have a review on the ZSD63, which is the brand new Chinese anti-aircraft vehicle added at rank to 3.7. And well, I have to say I'm pleasantly surprised by it. Now, if there was one thing that China was lacking, for the most part, was anti-aircraft. Your first anti-aircraft was actually the Type 65, well, now it's called the Hong Kong T-34, or however the hell you say it. Um, and that was the first proper AA you actually got. For the most part, China had to rely on roof-mounted 50 cals on board tanks and hope that your team was actually useful with their AA. Newsflash, they probably weren't. So it's actually nice to have something at 3.7 at rank 2. So what is the ZSD63? Well, as you can tell, this is a very unusual vehicle, and it's also a very tall vehicle, is one thing I've noticed. This thing is actually rather tall. It's bigger than an SMK in terms of height, which an SMK isn't exactly a short vehicle in comparison. So the ZSD63, as you can probably tell by the large hatch on the back of it, as the camera does that automatically, this is actually an APC. This is a modified APC with a turret basket containing two 25mm PG-87 cannons. These are not the same as the Shilkers, but they are very similar. Now, as for the vehicle's origins, I know literally nothing. The only thing I know is it's an APC, and that it was built either in the 70s or the 80s. That's all I know, because I literally don't know anything about this thing. I've been given literally no detail about it. So what is it like to play? Well, I've heard this thing's apparently amphibious, and as far as I can tell, that does not work, if that is true. But it's when we look at stuff like the armor. Now remember, this thing is, as far as I know, it's an APC. So just remember, the armor is shit. 12mm at its most, 10 on the upper glacis, 8 and 10 on the sides respectively, 8 on the back, and 8 all around the turret. That's not a lot, but this is an anti-aircraft. You can't expect a lot for an AA. However, given its size, you would expect at least 15 to 20 millimeters of armor, but hey ho, if you're taking hits anyway, you're probably dead. One thing I have noticed on this vehicle is that the hull break is very inconsistent. I've taken multiple shots to the engine from a long-barreled 75mm Chinook 2, and that doesn't seem to hull break it, but yet an artillery round hitting the track hull breaks it. So the hull break is very inconsistent. I wouldn't rely on hull breaking this vehicle if you fight this thing. I would actually recommend going for the turret and then the hull, in that order. So in terms of turret reverse, it's actually got an incredibly fast turret reverse for what it is. 50.8, or sorry, 3 degrees a second. Gun elevation and depression. Gun depression is 10 degrees down and 90 up, but obviously you don't have a roof because obviously that's where the guns go. If you get shot from above, you're probably dead, but at least you'll take the enemy aircraft with you. Now this is where we get into crew survivability, and this is where it starts to get a little interesting. As you can tell, there's a bit of composition armor inside the vehicle. This is to help to protect the engines, or the engine itself, and the radiator. Now I'm fairly certain this is what is triggering the hull break to not actually work on the engine. I'm not sure. I reckon it's because obviously the round penetrates the side armor of the vehicle, or even the frontal armor, hits this, loses a lot more velocity, and just doesn't have the capacity to hull break the engine. That's my theory anyway. The only real times I died in this thing were to ammo racks and a crew death. 3 of your crews sit in a very open and unarmored, well, I say unarmored, more like weakly armored turret. This isn't great, but at the same time, this thing's got the guns to shred it, whatever it likes. And the hull armor's not going to protect it from anything other than light machine gun fire, but that should be enough to at least get you to reverse or drive away. Because for this thing's size, it is actually relatively fast. So let's go over how I did in the actual vehicle. I got 8 deaths, 13 air, and 28 ground. I used it more as a tank buster, but if a plane came along, I would use it as one. So it gives you an idea of this thing is versatile. And finally, before I move on, let's go over the belts. So obviously you get default, which I would actually recommend carrying default rounds, not the Type 87 AP, but to be honest, that was my knee whacking my desk, and sorry about that if you heard that. But this to me seems to be the more versatile belt. But the AP rounds can still shred an aircraft if you give it enough time on target. I say that, and in this gameplay I kill a Corsair in 4 shells, but even so. The Type 87 HE I personally wouldn't bother with. This belt is only restricted to AA duties. Maybe carry 1, but with this reload rate of 26.7 seconds on my current crew, and a maximum reload of which is 25 seconds, that gives you a clear idea of just how long it takes to reload this bloody thing, and it is a great hair simulator. But if you get in the right situation, you have enough cover, and you have good teammates working with you, this thing's incredibly good. And I actually recommend trying it as a tank buster as well, so that gives you an idea of just how good an AA is, if it can basically be a Chinese Wirbelwind, albeit at a stretch, because, well, this thing gets the reload rate of, well, I could probably do a small Sudoku puzzle by the time this thing reloads, but even so. Like, if you have really bad crews, I would actually recommend buffing your crews before you play this vehicle. Cutting down the reload by about 6 seconds can make the difference between life and death, so that's my advice. So again, in this battle, there's a bug in the replay. I'm actually joined in this battle by Flight Sim, also known as DSKPG SOE. Hope I aced that, because, well, that's a very awkward name, but even so. And he is actually grinding the Chinese tech tree in his Chinese M4A4 first thing. I don't know how you say it, it's Chinese. But it's the premium Sherman that China gets. So you'll notice immediately the size of this vehicle. I'm taller than his Sherman, I'm taller than that KV-1, and yeah. This thing's relatively tall, and as I said, hull break is inconsistent, but still to be considered, if that makes any sense to any of you, but even so. Top speed forward is about 37 miles an hour. Stock, you'll hit about 20 to 25. And spaded, which it pretty much was in this battle, you can actually get up to around the 30s if you give it enough room to accelerate. So obviously again, the bug in the replay is happening. Obviously I mentioned it in the M4 Hybrid review, although this may come out before the M4 Hybrid, I'm not sure, I'll have to decide that. But essentially all the modules apart from the bullets that I'm using are, well, bullets / shells that I'm using are only shown, and the only things that will pop up will be either spare retard or fire extinguisher, depending on if I use them in the battle. That's a new bug that's recently been happening in replays, so I can only apologise for that. Anyway, less of me sounding like a news reporter, and let's get into the vehicle. So, normally I tend to suggest in Spade reviews, when it comes to tanks, that you should get tracks. A pretty important module in most people's eyes. However, I don't think you should in this vehicle. This thing turns pretty alright on its own. And with the engine being powerful enough to get the vehicle moving, I personally don't see the problem. So I would actually advise leaving the tracks towards the end, because I'd actually prioritize getting belts for this thing. Obviously remember, you don't want to carry the Type 87 HE, which is just fragmentation and incendiary, but it works pretty much the same. So at this point, flight's actually been taken out by a Japanese M24. It's a real battle of the nations. They just love a bit of copy paste. But anyway, if you've seen my copy paste discussion, you'll see my exact opinions on it. And this is where I find was an Italian M24 kill number 1. What I didn't know though is, and you saw how quick those bullets left the barrel, just to point out. You only get 60, well you only get 80 rounds in 2 clips. I displayed some poor shooting there, don't shoot like that, it won't get you far. The guns are relatively high velocity, so you can pretty much lead just a little bit on most aircraft. However, if you still don't think you're leading enough, lead a little more. That's the best advice I can give for AA. So as you can see up there's actually a Chinook 2. And I actually took the opportunity to just empty the rest of the mag into that guy so I can reload, because well, this thing takes forever. And one piece of advice I'm actually going to give to you is, if you are down to about 40 rounds, flush your clip. Trust me. As long as you're in cover and you've got teammates near you, flush your damn clip. It will make the difference between life and death. But anyway. So as you can tell, the reload takes forever. But once the reload's up and running, and your guns are ready to fire, as you can tell, it only takes a couple of rounds to down a bird. Air kill number 1. Now I have no idea what that guy was actually doing. He looked like he was trying to team kill his 202 friend. I don't know why. I really don't know why. Probably because I didn't have the reload on the go. Like, I wasn't reloaded, so I wasn't shooting at the 202. Maybe he said like he was taking his anger out on the 202. So obviously he didn't know that I was here. I don't know. It's that was just a weird incident for me to witness. But obviously I'm only firing in short bursts, because obviously I only get 80 rounds in total for each clip, and there you go, it just melted that 202. In terms of reloads, I believe you only get 6 reloads in this thing, so use them wisely is all I'll say, because you don't want to run out of ammo. That'd be a very awkward situation if something like a Panzer III rolled around the corner, but even so. So obviously I hear the gun going off and I look around and I spot the Chinook. Now I think I only had about 50 rounds left, or I was on the reload. Never mind, I've just reloaded, looks like I've gone to the replay. Now at this range you can't really kill a Chinook 2, but you can give it a very good spanking, as you can see right there. It took out his transmission, his track, his entire turret crew. He's not having a very good day, is he? But obviously, again, I'm on the reload. So in this battle I actually have a pretty skilled up crew in my Chinese vehicle. This is a almost max out reload, I believe, on this vehicle. And yeah, it's a pretty good crew what I've got on this thing. It's nothing like what Fly or Bo would probably have, but to me this is a pretty sufficient crew for what I need it for. So at this point, Flight's actually out. He got taken out in another vehicle, as far as I know, or he's died once in the Sherman. I wasn't really paying attention to him, to be honest. I was too busy looking around at everything else. But there is a Japs here. Now, whilst I do knock the Japs here, and its rudder is absolute crap nowadays, it really can work in ground forces, but not when there's a ZSD63 driving around. One other point I forgot to mention is the vehicle actually has the turret, bit about driving right there from me. The vehicle's turret is actually mounted to the rear of the tank. I'm going to call it a tank because I really can't be asked to call it an APC. Pretty much what I would suggest to do is, because obviously it's a turret basket vehicle, any fuse round that explodes inside the hull is only going to hit fuel or ammo. And let's be real, there's a lot of space inside there, and there's the 4-round burst I was mentioning in the hangar and everything. That was a 4-round burst. But as I said, if you're going to use this vehicle in a tank destroyer role, and there's a new bug I've just noticed, see if you guys can spot it. I'll give you a clue, it's on the cursor. And basically, to put it simply, you'd be better off reversing the vehicle around the corner. You may notice I did that with the Italian Chaffee. I did that to ensure I couldn't be killed immediately. What you've got to remember is that what you got to remember is this vehicle is, well, it has a turret basket. If you don't know what a turret basket is, it's really simple, but I'm not going to explain it. That's a simple Google search. But essentially, a turret basket would protect the crew from light shrapnel in this vehicle. So at this point, I guess you could say I'm spawn camping. I mean, I can sort of understand it, but we're up to 3 air kills and 4 ground now, and well, this is pretty much the end of the battle, but I'm just going to continue with my point here. Because obviously if we look inside the vehicle, if I just hold O, you can see the ammunition is actually stored near the engine block. There's a bit that runs across here, but for the most part, anything that hits around here or here will either hit parts of the engine, the radiator, or the fuel tank. It will not actually hit the turret crew. So you never know, if someone's dumb enough to shoot your hull there, you may just get away with it. But anyway, I'm going to let you guys off. I hope you enjoyed today's review on the ZSD63. I really do think you should pick this thing up. It is a perfect anti-aircraft vehicle to bolster the 3.7 Chinese lineup. And I will see you all on the next one.